Hey everyone, I'm Evan, and welcome to the ProfNoctis Weekly Show. This episode, we have the origin story of the ProfNoctis himself right here. Tell us what we can expect.
All the ins and outs and deep, dark secrets of yours truly, little old me.
Let's get right to it. Okay, everyone, we have a very special interview today. Today, we will be interviewing our very own Professor Noctis. Prof, say hey to the world.
What's up? I'm excited.
So we're going to be covering a little bit of the, what do you want to call it, your origin story? That sounds like a bit of a villain thing, right? How you got the way that you were. So maybe...
Yeah, heroes have origin stories, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They do. But I feel like it comes more with villains typically. You like to understand why they're so bad and the way that they are.
Well, I mean, I'm still fairly young. Maybe I've still got time to go dark.
Oh, okay. So you're saying that maybe we're starting your villain arc. Okay,
This is my new arc.
if you were to be a villain, what would be the thing that maybe we'll do our mini game stretch break a little early. If you were to be a villain, what is the thing that has triggered you, Wade, to be a villain?
My students. The end of the semester. Asking for bonus points. That is the triggering arc.
The evil villain. In his villainous manifesto, the answer was bonus points.
That or discussions about side content.
Side quests. Side quests sent him on a vicious spiral.
Yeah, and really just listening to people talk about side quests and how they don't like certain games because of side quests.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, well, they're optional.
Yeah.
So
mine's probably robocalls, like spam calls. He turned to his evil
very
way.
legitimate.
Yeah,
answer,
one too many spam calls, and he turned to his evil way. So you ended up in grad school writing a dissertation on video games, and you may not have known that this was possible, but I want to start here, and then we'll kind of build back up to it. So you have this dissertation that you've written, and that kind of spawned all of this, right?
Yeah, everything here is due to writing that dissertation in 2019, for sure. And I did not set out to write a video game dissertation or anything like that.
Yeah.
It just kind of it fell in my lap, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it was a series of synchronous coincidences that ended up with this.
So how has it changed your life? How has it impacted kind of the trajectory that you were on? And then we'll get to kind of how you got there.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of my origin story, from undergrad on, I was studying religion, right? I became religious personally when I was in middle school. I wanted to go into professional practicing religious life, being a minister, a pastor, some sort of religious leader. And so I got a religion major in undergrad. But the other thing about undergrad was that I found not only the stories, the theology, and the mythologies really compelling, but I also took a slew of literature classes.
Okay.
And this, I mean, if we really want to talk about an origin story, it was not just my religion professors, but it was one particular literature professor named Dr. Susan Hagen.
Shout out Dr. Hagen.
Shout out Dr. Hagen. She taught, I remember a class that she taught my freshman year called Monsters, Monarchs, and Monastics. Okay. Pretty banger title.
Yeah.
And it went through everything from like a little bit of King Arthur to there was Beowulf, Canterbury Tales, all this stuff. It was a survey class of all of these different writings. I fell in love with it. I loved reading and writing and all this stuff connected to that. This professor, I took her 5 times, 5 different classes.
Big shout out, Dr. Hagen.
Just loved it. And the reason I loved it is because she always made us look at the literature through the lens of modern media. So she would bring in movies, modern fiction books. But then she would give us final projects. And I remember that I was the first person, I think, that ever chose a video game for a final project for her. And she found it so interesting and compelling and was just like, you've got to keep doing this sort of thing. Now, I was 20 years old at that point.
Yeah.
And had no concept that this could ever be a thing. I just wanted to like do youth ministry or like, lead churches, all that kind of stuff. So I graduated, didn't really think anything of it. Continued on my trajectory, went over to Emory, got my grad degree in religion again, and then came back to Alabama, and I was just like working in churches. Eventually started working at the University of Alabama in religious life. So then I started on a doctoral program, and again, it was not about video games at all. I'm studying leadership. I'm studying, how to convey these ancient stories to a modern audience. That's what it was. Yeah.
Let's talk for a second about that moment where Dr. Hagen believed and saw something in you that you maybe didn't see or know about yourself, and the role that a teacher or someone in your life can have to do that, kind of spark that curiosity. Tell me what that was like and what you experienced in that process. So what was going on in your head when she communicated to you, you have to keep doing this? Because that's an amazing statement to hear from someone that you respect, especially someone you've taken 5 classes from. You have to keep doing this. The way that she seemed to believe in you seemed interesting.
Yeah, and it was a final project, and I was presenting to the class, and the question that was kind of the guiding question for these projects was, when you were reading or experiencing some of these texts, in my case, it was King Arthur, Lancelot, Arthur, Guinevere, all of that.
Which one are you in that story?
I'm the narrator. It doesn't end well for any of them, so I'd rather not be any of them.
Yeah, that's
fair. So, the court jester, please.
I'm the narrator.
The narrator. So she said, "What do you conjure up in your mind when you're reading and hearing these stories?" And I thought of the opening scene of Final Fantasy VIII. The opening scene of Final Fantasy VIII. So
is that because King Arthur had a gunblade, or?
Good. I am so proud of you for knowing anything about Final Fantasy VIII. I'm so overwhelmingly beaming with pride right now, because that's not a lot of people know or like Final Fantasy VIII. Well, I think a lot of people do, but like it. But it is one of my favorites. So I was thinking about this opening
like children.
Scene. Yeah, except 5. Not that one.
But 5 doesn't know its own identity because it's whatever. Anyways, continue.
I know. I don't want to get into that fight here with the fans, but no. The opening scene of Final Fantasy VIII has 2 characters, Squall and Cypher, and these images are juxtaposed with Rinoa, who is the main love interest.
I forgot. That's such a. You can tell that it had to have been made like around the Matrix because they needed to like do cool
just these names.
Yeah.
Well, now they've got things like Clive and Glenn and stuff.
Oh, Glenn. Wild Glenn, names like Glenn. Shout out to all the Glens. If your name's Glenn, you got a Glenn in your life and you're watching or listening to this, shout out Glenn.
Yeah, hopefully people know you because they don't know Glenn in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So you equated this Arthurian legend to the opening of Final Fantasy VIII. So Cypher and Squall are in this opening sequence, and so for you, it's as though they are fighting over Rinoa. Now, that is not really a love triangle that should ever.
Rinoa is another character,
but Rinoa, she's the main female protagonist. So I showed this in class, and I kind of pause it as I'm going through, and this is my first experience of what.
No, go ahead. I'm curious.
Yeah. So this is my first experience of pressing play and pausing and saying, so here, and analyzing, dissecting an actual scene, and equating them to different characters. I was 20 years old and I was doing this. It's crazy.
I haven't heard this part of the
No
story
one's
before.
heard this. No one's heard this. Because I've really never told it. Because it was never pertinent.
So you brought your PlayStation into the classroom and like hooked it up to a TV or projector, or
how did I do it? What I want to say, I'm pretty sure we had YouTube back then. It was like 05. We had YouTube then. How old is YouTube?
I don't know. Let's find out.
How old is YouTube? Because there were probably two ways that I have done this in the past.
How old is YouTube?
How old is YouTube?
YouTube came out February 14th, 2005. So it's almost no.
Was I like the first person on YouTube?
You invented YouTube.
I discovered YouTube for an academic purpose.
Okay, so you did a lecture play essentially at 20 years old before that was even ever.
I'm trying to remember how it went down. Somehow I had the opening movie of this game. I think that it was on YouTube, but it's also possible that I don't think that I brought my PlayStation this time. There were other times when I did, but not
the first time. Okay.
Not the first time, just because I was like, I don't want to deal with that. But also, I'm not sure that my college classroom had that kind of technology set up, hook up.
Well, yeah. And I think just a brief moment of silence for Birmingham Southern.
Oh, yeah. Birmingham Southern. Hey, listen, it may be gone, but it's still alive in our hearts. The religion department sent me one of these mugs.
For those of you who don't know,
and all of the religions on the back.
Tragically,
at least the ones that we studied. Yeah.
Wade's undergrad alma mater closed.
It did.
Recently.
It did.
Yeah.
It was a long, hard fight, but Birmingham Southern College, a private liberal arts institute in Birmingham, Alabama, it was great. I am who I am today because of that college and the opportunities they gave me. You want to know why I chose Birmingham Southern? Because I had applied to Alabama and Auburn and all this kind of stuff. Okay, so the reason that I picked Birmingham Southern College, like a lot of schools, it has a Jan term. They called it interim.
Okay.
But it wasn't normal classes during January. Instead, they were specialty classes. So some people played bridge and learned how to play bridge and went to nursing homes and stuff like that. Others would do service learning, and they would go on all of these trips to whether it was like national or international, whatever it was, for the entire month. There was one that was a semester at sea. The entire month of January, you went with a astronomy professor. I took the astronomy professor, but I didn't take this class, to live at sea, like on a little boat, and you would chart your course according to the stars. Isn't that insane? There was another one that was dog sledding. I almost signed up for the dog sledding one. I wish I had.
This school rules.
It was awesome.
And we need to get it back.
I know, we need to get it back. So 3 of my 4 years, I was in Europe. Because that's why I came to Birmingham Southern. I wanted to travel as much as possible over my 4 years. And so every January, I would just head over to Europe with classes and professors, and it was awesome. But that was the reason. And the reason I wanted to do that was so that I could really set feet on the ground in cultures. And so returning to Dr. Hagen's class, that was the first time that I connected that video games allow me to put my feet on the ground of a culture that I don't know from the comfort of my own home.
Video games allow you to put your feet on the ground of a culture you don't know from your own home.
And this is why I spent 175 hours in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth when some people are spending 50 hours in it. It's because I want to talk to every single NPC, and I just keep doing circles and loops until they start repeating dialogue, because I am craving everything. It's the reason why I don't use mini maps and nav systems, and it's the reason why I don't do fast travel in games, because I am immersed in this world.
You don't do mini maps or fast travel ever?
I don't. Only when I have earned it. Like when I know where I'm going. But if I don't know where I'm going, then I refuse
Okay, you
to
got to get the
fast
lay of the
travel.
land first, and
I
then
have to get the lay of the land, and it's easier to get the lay of the land when you take out the mini map and the nav systems, because then you say, okay, you hang a right at the tree, and then you go straight for a bit, and then you're going to take a left. Otherwise, it's like just follow the mini map marker.
back in my day, we didn't
Yeah.
have Google Maps.
I'm telling you, like it is the most boomer thing that I do. Okay, I refuse to ask for directions from the mini map. Like I.
I love that you give directions in video games with landmarks in video games. You're gonna run past the NPC who dropped his bucket of biscuits, and then when you see the giant tree, you've gone too far.
But Evan, like seriously, with a mini map,
Yeah.
do you get those kind of little things? Like you don't pay attention to the tree or the NPC that dropped the bucket and all that stuff. You just don't.
We're doing
Unless it's a pertinent story setting.
We're doing a future segment on video game navigation system.
Oh, I think it would be amazing.
It would be really fun.
Because in my mind, this is the number one thing that open world games get wrong.
Yeah, we're definitely doing a segment on this. Yeah. All right, don't get it all out of the way now. All right, so your Jan terms, anyway. You went internationally. You realized that video games help you experience culture and set foot on the ground in cultures in your own home.
Literally, I am in oh gosh, where was I? I was in Glasgow, England, I believe.
Shout out MJ Gallagher.
Visiting some castles, and I am immediately imagining Final Fantasy IV, the first castle in a video game that I'd ever experienced, and I'm like, okay, I'm seeing this, and this was before like really, really good medieval 3D video games. So I'm still thinking in pixels. Okay, like there were some that were out, but like Final Fantasy has moved into a techno realm at this point. And like I am just imagining all of this stuff. And I think that those international trips to cultures that I had never experienced as a, small town country Alabama guy, like I'd never really thought of these sort of things. It opened my mind afresh, and I knew then that I wanted to teach about cultures.
Really?
I did, and so I had never dreamed that it would be through video games. Never dreamed, but there were remnants and traces of it. Not just in Dr. Hagen's class, but throughout my life. There, it was amazing.
Okay, so then connect the dots a little bit. You're continuing to play games. You're enjoying them. This sparks that you could use video games as a medium to instruct and tell stories and things like that. But then you are doing stuff professionally. You decide you want to get your doctorate. What's going on in the
Let me tell you about that. That's kind of an interesting story too. You're jogging a lot of my memories here. I was a youth minister throughout college. And
will you just explain what that is?
Yeah, youth minister, you're a youth director is somebody that works in a church with the 6th through 12th graders. So they're middle and high schoolers typically. So I am working with the 6th through 12th graders at a local church. That's kind of like my side job throughout college. And I wanted to teach them about decision making, but also about facing your fear. Okay. Now, I also wanted to be safe because sometimes like you hear of these like youth groups doing very, very dangerous things. Like let's jump off this thing, trust fall, and then they like break their legs or whatever. I'm not really into that.
Safety is everybody's responsibility.
I remember I brought my GameCube to the youth group and played the first opener to Resident Evil 4, and we passed around the controller, and I would pause it at certain points, and I would say, okay, everybody, you get to decide what the player does at this point. And what's going through your mind. And then I might read like a poem or something like that, something that gets them thinking, a lens, a framework, and then we keep playing. And then I have them talk about what was the moment where you were afraid for the character? What was the moment when, and then try to make that turn so that they're integrating it into their lives. I was doing this with 6th through 12th graders while I was in college. It was insane. Yeah.
Okay. Well, for those who aren't aware, the GameCube is one of Nintendo's consoles. It was it's beloved by many.
Mhm.
Wade was using it as it was intended because it's one of the only video game consoles that they ever made that came with a handle.
A handle on it,
So
yes.
you could
I
carry it
brought my little
around.
lunch pail, my
Yeah.
lunchbox.
So you could carry it places. So Wade obviously said, well, they put a handle on it. Of course they want me to take
It's
it
meant
to
to go
teach
with
these
me.
children about decision making. How did you land on Resident Evil 4? Because if you haven't ever played,
Yep.
the name itself kind of gets you in the lane of the game.
You
It's called,
probably wouldn't take it to a church.
yeah,
Like
it's called Resident Evil 4,
Evil.
and it deals with the biohazards and zombies type
Yeah.
things, and it's a bit of a scary game. It's kind of a horror. It's in
Yeah.
the horror genre.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, that opening scene, gosh, the signs were there. That opening scene takes place in a village where these zombie-esque people are incredibly devoted religiously. Okay. And yet they are zombie like, and then they become very murderous. And so there is a meta commentary that I'm talking to these 6th through 12th graders about faith and stuff. Like, hey, there's a zombie esque component to this. Let's not do that. Let's rise above it. But then there was the thing of very practical. It was October,
Oh,
which is when we celebrate Halloween.
yeah,
So I was like,
it was spook
scary,
season.
pseudo meta narrative about religious commentary and decision making. So
Yeah, I
great.
mean, listen, it was spooky time, and everything's fair game when it's spooky time.
Yeah, that's true. I currently in my religious life setting, I do an October series called Scarables. It is
Okay.
scary parables where I
That's
use
so good.
I take modern horror films
Yeah,
and I splice it up using the video editing I've learned from streaming, and splice in many like devotional, encouraging messages with scenes from these movies, and we don't put them out on YouTube or anything because of copyright, but you can do it in a live setting like this. So I show these, and it is the number one most asked for thing that I do.
Scarables. I'm writing that down for
Yeah.
October. We're getting so many good segment ideas from your origin story
I'm
here.
telling you, Scarables, man. But again, like all of this is how do you make something that people are not immediately interested in
Yeah,
more interesting? And so, like, whether it is a lecture or um a devotion or history, whatever it is, how can
yeah,
you pair this with something that people might be interested in? A movie, a video game, for
yeah.
example. That is where my research really lands.
So you ask yourself this question: how do I make things more interesting for people when they may not
Yeah.
be interested in it? And so you've been kind of experimenting along the way with this
Hmm.
method of instruction and learning that is more interactive.
Yeah.
So with Resident Evil 4, you had students make decisions and then process their decision making live together. What were
Hmm.
the results of that? What did they interact with it differently than maybe you
Oh, they
expected?
loved it,
They loved it. Okay.
and they loved it, and they would tell their friends. They were like, "Hey, in our youth group,
Yeah.
we played a video game and learned about stuff." I mean, it was like it was a really cool sort of marketing thing for us. It generated a lot of interest, but also what I found was that students would talk to me um, in a personal way that was depersonalized by using Leon, who's
Leon
the main
is
character of
okay.
Resident Evil 4,
Yeah.
right? And so they would say something to the extent of like, "That was really scary," like that scene when that thing's head popped off and like this monster came out. Very, very normal churchy sort of stuff. And I would usually ask a follow-up question like, "Hey, what was scary about that?" And then they
Yeah.
would tell me some story of like when they were a kid, they used to have this fear of this thing or
Oh.
whatever. And eventually it typically would turn into things that they're currently scared of.
Oh, okay.
And so it's just a very safe way to show vulnerability through Leon without really being vulnerable yourself, but you are being vulnerable
Yeah.
yourself. That's the sweet spot when you can help people think and talk about themselves in third person, which is really interesting. I love that personally.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, that leads straight into our mini game stretch break. So this, everybody, we're going to kick it to our mini game stretch break, and we'll be back in a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time in the weekly show where we get to stretch a little bit. It's time for our mini game stretch break. Wade, any good stretches you've been doing recently? Any new ones?
My body is falling apart, so every stretch is a good one right now.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, my left shoulder, man. It's all shoulder exercises and stretches right now. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I think probably in order to stretch well, we should probably hit that music. 1, 2, 3. Great job. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for our minigame stretch break, and we have our bingo wheel of vulnerability. There are 50 numbers in this bingo wheel. Here's your audio preview. There you go. So I'm going to pick out a number in the bingo wheel, and then Wade is going to pick out a question from our cards, but we have a different card deck.
We have a brand new card deck today. This is coming from the Heroes Journal set. This is actually from the Heroes Planner. You're going to be hearing a lot more about the Heroes Journal card decks and journals and all that kind of stuff in future streams. So we're testing it out today.
Okay, great. So we're going to turn their kind of challenge into a get-to-know-you question as we go together. So here we go. Wade, 1 through 50, what's your number?
I feel 27 today.
27. Okay, great. It's grabbed one. I don't know what it is. I'm going to say 17. All right, let's see what we got. Oh, no. The integrity is done. One had already fallen out. We got to start over. Or do you want to keep the one that was in here? Do you want to know what it was?
I don't know. I'm not into defying fate today. I feel like we just resign ourselves to it.
So. Okay. All right. Here we go. We're starting over. This is now taking forever. Hang in there. All right. Here we go. Tell me when.
Now.
All right. It grabbed one. I said 17. You said 27. And it was 33. So if you said 33, you got it right. All right. So give me question number 33 from the card deck here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
He's counting. He's counting. He's counting.
I'm counting. How about this one? Oh, man. Oh, this is intense. Are you ready for this?
I'm scared.
Oh, my gosh. This is... In bold, big letters, it says boss battle. Boss battle.
And the question is...
It's our first one. It's our first one, boss battle.
What's your social security number?
You're not going to get me. I'm not a grandpa yet.
Wait, this is the fishing card deck.
Fishing? They misspelled fishing here. Fishing minigame. What? Noctis. Boss battle. Exclamation point.
Exclamation point. I'm ready.
I want you to identify a difficult task that you've been putting off, and I want you to treat it like a boss battle.
No.
I want you to slay the task. Congrats, hero. Quest will be complete. So what is a task that you've currently been treating, like pushing aside, that you would consider your current boss battle? Oh my gosh.
I hate this.
What is your current boss battle? I can go. I'm ready for it.
I'm ready. I just have to decide if I actually want to say the thing that I've actually been putting off.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well,
you go first.
What you got?
No.
Okay, I'll go first. So I'm preparing for the fall semester right now, and the task that I keep putting off is writing. I am trying so hard to make an effort, but like I just keep getting distracted from like silly things, coffee meetings over here, staff meeting. It's really meetings that are killing me. But like I am trying to write everything from my syllabus for classes to all of the scripts for video essays this fall. And I just keep getting distracted. That feels like a huge boss battle. So I've got to like buff this morning and like take on this, I think it's a 7-headed dragon for me right now, because that's how many things I have to write.
Oh, yeah. Well, one head at a time.
Hercules.
Yeah, and then you got to burn the edges, right? Isn't that what he did?
Yeah. Not in the... He didn't burn them in the Disney version, so... But that
not a ton.
actual Hercules didn't have a lot of singing, so
That's true. And for copyright issues, we won't be singing that song.
no, we only massacre one song on this show, and that's the Gold Saucer theme.
That's so true. My thing that I've been putting off is LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, no.
Yeah,
the ultimate boss battle.
I don't. I have nothing. I hate all that stuff.
Oh, no.
But I need to do it. I need to have like that professional presence and get the resume up to date and all that stuff. And I hate it. I just want to do good work. I want to be recognized at least where it's relevant for that good work, and then just have what I need. I don't want to do the fake. Hey, it's me. I live for professional things. Yeah, hello.
People should just know you're great. Why don't
you.
more people know that? I don't get it.
You're like the town crier. You just walk around my hometown. He's great.
He's great. He's great.
Employ the man.
Hear you. Give him a job.
Give him a job. Pay him money.
He is good. I am a reference.
Yeah, there you
go. What do you do for a living? I am good too.
What do you do for a living? I am adequate.
I am adequate. It is not about me. It is about hiring him.
All right. Well, listener, what is it that you have been putting off, and how could you treat it like a boss battle to accomplish what you need to this week? We won't be accomplishing ours, and hopefully you will yours.
You're gonna eat those words. I'm gonna finish my Hydra today.
Yeah, you know what? And I'll do my LinkedIn. But luckily we record this ahead of time, so I got some runway.
For real.
I love it. Well, I will say, just as a reference, we talked about Lies of P a few episodes ago, and we said, what are we gonna do if you haven't beaten Lies of P by the time this episode airs? You beat it well before that episode airs. So
yeah.
That was your boss battle, so way to go. All right, everybody.
9 hours.
Back to the episode. Okay, so you have this idea of vulnerability that has popped up with students and their decision-making in these games. But then your role starts to change as you grow professionally. And when did you start thinking towards grad school in general, like your doctorate?
Yeah, I guess it was around 2015. I had a friend that said, hey, they just got into this program.
Yeah.
Maybe I should look into it. And so I did, and I got accepted, all this kind of stuff. And so it's ostensibly a leadership and teaching track. Okay. So it's like, how do you lead and communicate messages to groups of people? And especially religious life sort of messages. How are you going to do that? And concurrently, you select a research topic that you're wanting to do a dissertation. And I was not doing this research topic. This fell into my lap. Okay. I was doing a very different research topic that was not worthwhile for me at all. And really wasn't going anywhere. I wrote 2 chapters of 5 in it, but I was like, oh, I'm good. So around this time, Final Fantasy 15 comes out. And anybody that's followed me for any amount of time knows that I've been a huge Final Fantasy fan since 1992 when my dad brought home a Super Nintendo. We went to Blockbuster Video, picked up Final Fantasy 2/4, even though in America it was called 2 at that point because we're too dumb to have gotten Final Fantasy 2 and 3. And we played it, and he's explaining mythology to me. He's helping me sound out the names of mythological creatures. Like I called him Behemoth and Leviathan for Leviathan. And
those are not easy words, but that's adorable.
Behemoth was my favorite. Behemoth, not a behemoth. Yeah.
Aww.
So it was all things like that. And my dad would help me understand where these things came from. And he didn't really know all of it himself. It actually forced him to do a little bit more reading. But I remember playing that with my dad. And that is how I got into Final Fantasy. And my dad did a great job of this, too, because the game was probably a little bit more advanced than I truly understood. So while I was asleep sometimes, he would go and he would grind levels for me so that it was an easier boss fight the next day when I came back to. Isn't it sweet?
That is so
So
sweet.
I know, right? So that was my entry into Final Fantasy, and so
Yeah.
ever since then, I've been a day one kind of buyer. Jumped from Super Nintendo to PlayStation, on and on and on.
Yeah.
So then, while I'm in this doctoral program, Final Fantasy 15 comes out, and again, I'm a day one buyer, right? So I've played Final Fantasy 15 from day one, and people are like, "It wasn't complete on day one." Well, I can tell you, I have a dissertation that says otherwise. I love Final Fantasy 15, so I pick it up, and this is what happens. I spend all night playing it, and I'm enjoying the game. Okay, I'm like, I love Noctis. I love the side characters, and I play through a couple of chapters, and having 20 some odd years of religious education under my belt at this point, I'm beginning to notice some interesting similarities, some big ones. Noctis is fighting a behemoth, okay, and he's trying to save chocobos, and that immediately recalled to my mind David protecting sheep against lions, and I'm like, okay, well that's normal kind of shepherding stuff.
Yeah.
That could be a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Noctis fights Titan. Well, this is a real allusion to David and Goliath, right? A giant and a very small, boy.
Yeah.
And interestingly, with Titan, the final thing that kills Titan are 3 stones that are thrown at him in the form of magic stones, and then a final blow with a sword. Very David. Again, maybe too close, okay? Like, maybe too much of a stretch. So I was like, okay, well, maybe not. But then you start to learn a little bit more about Noctis's story, his ascension into kingship, and I'm like, okay, this is almost beat for beat.
Yeah.
A city harbors Noctis, and when Noctis is gone, after being helped by them, the enemy comes in and slaughters people in the town who helped him. That exact same thing happens to David with the city of Nob. And so I'm reading in literally around chapter 12, 11, or 12, I have a Bible out to read Jewish history, and I have a controller in the other hand, and I'm playing and I'm reading and I'm playing and I'm reading back and forth.
Shout out to the logo.
Yeah, right. And so I'm playing this game and I'm like, this is really, really wild, really, really interesting. Now, at this point in my actual life, I am also not only in an education program, but I am also teaching as an adjunct at the University of Alabama. I'm teaching like essentially like a book study, right? They have a common book for my department every year, and I was teaching a group of freshmen this. It was like a 1 or 2 hour class.
Yeah.
Nothing major or whatever. So I wasn't I didn't suck at teaching, apparently, because they came to me and they were like, "Hey, your ratings are pretty good. Would you like to teach more in the future?"
Yeah.
I have just finished Final Fantasy 15 at this point, and I'm like, my mind is buzzing. Chapter 13 for me blew the lid off the thing, and I was like, I can do something with this.
Did you hear Dr. Hagen's voice in your head?
I kind of, honestly, it was like, you can do this and you need to do this. So what I did first and foremost was I wanted to put together a pilot study. So I gathered some interested people from both religious life and then also from a local gaming, like esports group with the University of Alabama. And I was like, hey, let's let me teach you something.
Right.
Would you be interested in doing some interdisciplinary work between religion and a video game? And they were all like, absolutely. And so we did essentially
your GameCube by the handle.
I know, by the handle, and I'm bringing it. And it was essentially like a video game book club or video game Bible study. And so I had them play through parts of the game. We'd come together, we'd meet. I would have them read certain passages of Jewish history that I'd laid out. It was a 4 or 5 week thing.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, they were like, this was incredible. Like, I never knew these stories. So the University of Alabama says, we'd like for you to teach more. And do you have any ideas? Would you like to pitch a course? And I said, I have got this weird thing that I've been doing, and it's been working with a small group of people. Maybe it's something that we could do.
Yeah.
And I pitched this Judeo-Christian kingship through Final Fantasy 15. And they said, we love it. Let's give it a shot. Class filled up, and it was amazing. And these students became pseudo research assistants with
Yeah.
me. I was like, I started out the class by saying, what are the things that you found interesting? And I'd write them all up on the whiteboard, and I'd say, okay, what parallels
Yeah.
with biblical kingship literature did you find in this chapter? And we would just list them all out. Then we'd have an amazing discussion. I could bring up YouTube in this classroom, and I would show
Yeah.
clips, and I would do all of this really interesting, immersive sort of stuff. And it was a banger class. So one theme in the game is, you're on a journey with your friends, and you're constantly going on little campfires and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the characters is Prompto, and his whole deal is he's going to take pictures to record your journey. Okay, and
Yeah.
like this idea of photos in the game becomes really, really important at the end. And so I wanted to do something special for them because they were my research assistants throughout this whole semester. And so I invited them over to the house, and I had a little fire pit thing in the backyard, and we did like our own campfire. And I asked them all
That's
to
awesome.
bring a photo that is like part of their own ascension story, their ascension not to a throne, but to who they are in life. So we went around, and we shared these photos and these stories, and it was just deeply personal. And every one of them was like, "Hey, this is the most impactful class I've ever taken in my life. Like, I came in wanting to be this profession, and now I'm changing my major. I was in a
Wow.
relationship, and I realized it wasn't right for me. I was in, I was afraid to talk to my parents about something, and now I have the courage to. I mean, we're talking like students with significant life decisions that came out of Final Fantasy 15
Yeah.
as a class, and I am just floored. Um, and I've been teaching it ever since. In that same vein, it's kind of amazing.
It's an incredible story of an idea that has been percolating for a long time. Like there was like a seed, you hear about seeds
Yeah,
getting planted and ideas
yeah,
growing, and having that impact for something that was started when you were an undergrad to
yeah,
then be able to do it for others who were in undergrad, right? Like you
yeah.
ascended into the role that Professor Hagen had in your life to be able to do it for others, it seems. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like to nurture something that you just enjoy, that you have a dream of, but you aren't quite sure how it's going to manifest itself? Because I don't know if you
Yeah.
could immediately picture where you would be around that campfire
No.
with students. Maybe you got a glimmer of it, but what does that look like for you?
One of my religion professors, now passed, named Bishop Morgan. He was a bishop in the United Methodist Church. One of my favorite religion professors. At the end of every semester that I was in his class, he would invite our entire class, and we're talking 45 students, over to his house, and he and his wife would cook us a big meal and stuff, and then he would just kind of like have a study session with us. But I remembered that hospitality, and I knew that that was the kind of community that I wanted to have in my classroom.
Yeah.
Where I was definitely teaching them, but at the same time, they were building bonds and relationships as
Mm-hmm.
they were on a journey together. In fact, he led 3 of my January term classes in Greece and Ireland, Scotland, Wales, all these places. And I just remember him being almost like a tour guide through both religion and culture and life
Mm-hmm.
for me and my students, or me and my classmates. And so I knew that I wanted to do that for my students. While I couldn't take them all over the world, I could take them through these video game worlds. And so to emulate his teaching style and relational style and tourism style through a
Yeah.
video game. Like, it was already embedded in me. So I never really set out to be the professor of religion in video games. And that was never the thing. I was going to work in religious life.
Yeah.
That was it. But this fell in my lap, and I realized my interests, something that I love doing, had some appeal for those
Yeah.
around me. And I think that to look back on it, I was trying to set myself on a trajectory that was completely different from where I've ended up. Completely.
Sure.
Like professionally, personally, all of it. And I was playing Final Fantasy on the side. And somewhere in there, it all crossed. Where Final Fantasy, in teaching and sharing a love and interest of games and the real world, and helping people live into the life that they want to live, that became kind of the thrust of my focus.
But you had enough direction to go, right? Maybe you thought you knew the destination, but you had enough direction to take the steps that you needed. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Just keeping on moving forward. Even I wouldn't say that I was ever traveling in the wrong direction. It's just that my direction got clarified. I never stopped moving forward toward, my goals, toward my life. It's just at some points there was just like a fork in the road. And I was like, well, I'm pretty interested in that. Let me take that. The thing that students, and I guess adults as well, don't realize about decision making is that there is an inherent risk every time you make a decision, because when you say yes to something, you are saying no to myriad other possibilities. This is why we get crippled by decision making. So for me, I knew if I'm saying yes to being an instructor that uses video games, well, there are going to be people that don't take me seriously.
Yeah.
There are going to be consequences to that, and yet there's also going to be some gems and some good that comes out of that. So for me, it was just chase after my interest. I'm the only one that's interested in this, it seems. So let me go for it. If I don't do it, then who will? And that was the question that I kept thinking. Because I'll be honest, it is a little unglamorous in collegiate and academic circles to want to use video games, simply because it has not been done before. Now, hopefully through my work and through some of the work of my colleagues, it's gaining traction. But I would still not say that it is glamorous and that it's seen as an equal on academic footing.
For you, how do you keep that energy and perseverance when something doesn't seem clear? Maybe the path doesn't seem like it's totally set out, but you know that you need to keep going. Yeah. This is a long time to foster these things that you've cared about, but they've managed to kind of merge over time. How did you kind of keep a positive attitude and keep going to pursue those things?
When it's fun, it really isn't that hard of a decision. Like, I just wanted to keep on playing Final Fantasy and teaching people about Final Fantasy. My favorite lecture that I do every single semester is a lecture called "What is Final Fantasy?" It's my favorite because I've got sorority girls, frat guys, people that aren't gamers. I've got athletes. I've got esports guys that have only played Apex or whatever, and then I've got some Final Fantasy fans as well. And I have to bring them all onto the same ship by saying, what is Final Fantasy and why aren't we playing the first 14? Because typically, you would want to play the first 14. And so that's where that lecture comes from. I've got a video essay that answers that question. I do in about 14, 15 minutes there what my students get for 75 minutes in our class. So, but it's that sort of thing that I love it so much and love these games so much that I want to keep doing stuff about it. It doesn't feel like work to me at all. The other thing that I'll say to your question is I know that it works. And by what works, what I mean is I know that it's deeply impactful and has, like, my research shows there are deep psychosocial impact benefits
Yeah.
to students that learn through video games. And so that keeps me going. It's like there's a positive benefit. The purpose of education, according to John Dewey, educational theorist, is behavior change. Is
Yeah.
to change the trajectory of someone's behavior based on new insights. And so, for me, that is what I'm trying to do. And there's no better way of doing it, in my opinion, than giving people those new first-person memories of video games.
To change someone's behavior based on new
Yeah,
insights. That's cool. The
yeah,
new insight part is interesting because you're also in a field where you guys and your colleagues, you're trying something new. You're trying to incorporate a
sure.
new art form that didn't exist in the same way in the past. I wonder,
Yeah.
as we wrap up, if you could talk about what it's like to be kind of on that precipice, that leading edge of a new area of understanding and spending time on something, not knowing if it's going to work out or be effective or
Yeah.
be validated in the industry or the field, and kind of where you see that emerging in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely sure. The entire trajectory of my career at this point has been, to use a Frozen 2 line, just do the next right thing. Okay. That's it. It's like if there's another opportunity, then I will take it.
Yeah,
I never wanted to be a streamer. I'm too old to be a streamer. To be perfectly honest, or at
that's
least
not
that's what I
true.
thought.
That's not true.
It is true because, like, I missed the years of watching streamers and YouTube. I remember when YouTube was created clearly from the beginning of the
Yeah.
show, but I never watched it. Okay, like if I need to fix a leaky faucet, I would Google it, and a YouTube video would come up, and I'd follow it. But um, I moved over to Twitch out of necessity during COVID, and I think this is an important part of this story. Like, when Zoom could not handle live streaming Final Fantasy 15 to my students so I could do lectures, I had to come up with an alternative. So I went over to Twitch. And through Twitch, my students would hop in, they would do their homework or whatever, but then other people hopped in too, and they found it interesting. And that's how
Mhm.
ProfNoctis was born. Like it was not like I never wanted to be a streamer or a content creator. That was never it. In fact, the very name, people sometimes are like, "Is he a real professor?" Or like, "Oh, that's just a catchy name," or whatever. That name came about because one of my students who was sleeping in class forgot my name, and he simply called me Professor Noctis. Okay, like that's where the name came from. Like.
The ProfNoctis origin story. The fact that you came up with the name because a student forgot your name in class and just called you Professor Noctis is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
But as we kind of, I can't get over that. As we kind of start to wrap up, I wonder what encouragement you would give to those who are seeing some kind of vision and direction for where they want to go, kind of like you were, but maybe we don't know how to get there. We don't know what it looks like. I think we often find ourselves in that situation, and
Yeah.
I'd be curious to what you would say and how you would encourage those folks.
Whatever you are into, whatever you're passionate about, whatever brings you joy and interest in this world, that's the thing that you chase after. Okay. It may bring success, it may have an audience, but that's not really up for you to decide. Your job is to steward and to nurture the interest and passion that you've been given. And so, I mean, you hear athletes talk about for love of the game. In the same respect, the thing that you can create and contribute into the world, whether that is music or whether that is your love or analysis for a video game like I do, or something completely different that no one has ever done before, you simply have to chase that pathway. Now, if there's a market for it, awesome. But if there's not, then the reward in and of itself is just putting that out there. And that's the thing that I think people get hung up on. There's this question of, is it worth my time to do this sort of thing if nobody's going to watch or if nobody's going to enjoy it or whatever? And the answer is, like, if you've got that passion in you, whether you are like religious or not, like for whatever reason, you have been chosen for this passion. Get it back into the world. There's a synchronicity that laid out steps for you to act on this thing. And that's the thing I think that keeps me going. It's why I put out videos. Some of them are going to do some numbers, others are just going to be duds, but I know that this was something that I had to put out into the world because I was interested in it. My bet is that somebody else was too. And that's the encouragement that I would give. I talk to content creators all the time, and that is the fundamental fear for every person. Is it worth my while to do this? But I would encourage a love for the game, a love for the creation, because the very act of creation is the reward itself.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for your time and for your friendship and for the vulnerability just to help us understand your origin story. And I'm hopeful that it's not a villain's origin story by the end. I think
we'll see. Watch my videos.
Watch my videos or else.
Or else.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Thanks everyone for listening. We so appreciate it. We hope that you're just having the best week ever, wherever you find yourself. Thanks again to Sing4D Laughter for the use of the music. Thanks to Nick Smith for doing all the graphics. This episode was written and edited by us and listened to by you. And we hope everything's going great in your life. We will see you next episode.